Excluding my mom, what's the worst sex you've ever had? We were in my car after work near the woods. Halfway through, someone bangs on the window yelling, "What the duck are you doing?" It was her ex-boyfriend. Your dad? Bro. My first Reddit gold. Thanks, stranger. If you'd like to point me in the direction of your father, I'll give Reddit my professional assessment of his sexual capabilities as well. One of the girls I dated in college was very sheltered, and it sometimes led to some interesting situations. The first time we attempted sex, she tried to finger that area between my butt and my balls and managed to stab her index finger down onto my left testicle. And she had decently long fingernails. I nearly puked from the pain. Needless to say, I was completely done with anything sexual after all that, and we just watched TV the rest of the evening while I sat on the couch whimpering. I had an asthma attack midway through sex with some random dude. I'm a woman. He was on top in missionary and I started gasping and trying to push him off me so I could get my inhaler. He starts saying, "Oh, you like that?" and went harder. He thought I was coming. I was not. It was a cloudy December afternoon a few years back. An old high school acquaintance and I decided to have lunch after randomly running into each other at a bar a week before and had a good time. We decided on Mexican food. This story is not about it. She had shrimp ceviche. I had some spicy cactus type. It was good. We go back to her apartment and start watching you.I. Get about 5 minutes into an episode and decide to just go for it. Here's how it went. She would not let me take the blanket off of the top of me. I had drank a little the night before, so I was sweating buckets on this girl. Like this, it was comical. Her shrimp ceviche breath was not the biggest turn on, though I'm sure I smelled wonderful, too. It was pretty vanilla sex and I just wasn't into it. After about 30 minutes of thrusting and sweating, I decided to just have her jerk me off. Well, that sucked too, so I just said, "Lem, do it." So, I'm viciously beating off with this chick sitting next to me just watching. I finally get off, and as if this experience couldn't have been worse, I come into my own ducking face. I was done after that and made up some itty excuse to go home after we smoked a cigarette in her room. There's no telling what she told, if she told her friends about it. I still lose sleep over that. Edit. Haha, my first gold came from this sob story. Thanks, kind stranger. I've also gotta say, I know it was totally 50/50 horrible sex. I was definitely on the other side of the bad sex. But hey man, when ya got a nut, ya got a nut. Had a woman give me a blowjob with Pop Rocks. Initially thought it would be awesome. Had to have her stop because it felt like gravel rubbing against the head of my D. First girlfriend in high school that I had sex with. She was bisexual, but I thought she might just be a lesbian. Most times she would literally just lay on her back and not move. She refused to touch my D. 90% of the time I couldn't even come. The first time I did come, in a condom, she panicked and told her parents that she thought she was pregnant. Relationship didn't last much longer. Wife wanted it to have another woman. I landed the dream gig. Girl comes over and it was an immediate sigh. Not the good kind. She was completely unshaved everywhere. Overweight. Which isn't a terrible thing, but it was in this case very unhygienic and was kind of rude. I couldn't get it up at all after having the worst going down on someone experience of my life. My wife had to help just to get me okay to basically perform. I eventually finished somehow, and with that notion, my wife called it quits and told her to leave. I vomited a little afterwards. Good times. Hot friend reached down to my crotch and grabbed my D. Woohoo. Right? We go into my room, and she refuses all foreplay involving my D, so I barely get past a chub. She tells me to finger her until she comes. Squirts all over my bed and me. Tells all her friends I have a tiny D. I'm a grower, and if you don't help it grow it won't show. Comma. More just embarrassing than anything. But my girlfriend had been teasing me all day by touching me, but never going further than that. By the end of the day she's all excited thinking it will be great sex with all of the build up. But I feel like I could burst just thinking about it. Came in like 30 seconds. So freshman year of college and I'm a virgin. My first girlfriend in college was actually the cutest girl I've dated. We start messing around and she wanted to move fast, which is fine by me. I'm wearing this V card like a scarlet letter. We start having sex and she's like, okay, so you can't make me come. So just let me do my thing for a minute and get off. Then I'll do you. And we'll both be happy. I'm thinking I6 supposed to be so formal? Whatever. Let's do it. 1 minute in. She forces me to sit still as she gyrates on my D. With this intent look on her face like she's internally trying to fit the square peg to the square hole. And then she gets off. Then, once finished, she clenches her V on my D super hard. And brags how she used to get her boyfriends off so fast. So I'll be done in like a minute. I acted like I was. This is how 6 goes every time. I literally thought 6 was just so itty. One time I got drunk and was like, duck it, I'm gonna take her to Pound Town and take control, and we bang for like 30 minutes non-stop. And I feel like a freaking pornstar. She doesn't make a noise. And when I stop breathless, she asks with the most condescending and bored tone, are you done yet? I meekly mutter yes. And she gets on top. Does her voodoo rain dance on my D for 30 seconds. Gets off. And goes to bed. This was the first and only time I've broken up with a woman because of 6. Which is itty because she was an amazing girl except for that specific thing. Which is huge sadly. The classic pull back, thrust forward, and bend. Could not get back in the mood after that pain. Was giving my boyfriend oral 6 and when he thrust into my mouth, his D went under my tongue and tore the membrane that connects your tongue to the bottom of your mouth. Couldn't move my tongue for about 3 weeks. Self-heating massage oils that read for external use only are not ducking around with that warning label. Minute 1 greet 6. Minute 2 that's a little warm. Minute 3 both of us curled up in a fetal position with ice packs on our junk. Every time I've excluded your mom it was the worst 6. Guy with huge awesome D put it in me. Never thrusted once. Then pulled out immediately and came. Wouldn't have been so terrible if he at least went down on me. I lost my virginity to a girl who was 9.5 months pregnant. She was induced the next week. She had been a stripper when I met her through mutual friends. Kept hanging out with those friends and she was always around. One day our mutual friends made up an excuse to leave us alone. We were watching Squidbillies and she jumped me. My D was numb the entire time. She got off in about 3 minutes and then it was over. Time I lost my virginity for a few reasons. My roommate was in the room watching Netflix. Barely knew the girl. Her pussy tasted salty and sweaty. When my roommate finished watching Netflix and tried to sleep he yelled at us and told us to go to sleep after groaning for 30 minutes. And I didn't even come. 2/10. Edit. I didn't think this would end up being my new top comment. Bought some really expensive leather wrist and ankle restraints for my GF. We have tied up before and she was really into it. We strapped her down and started getting freaky. Then out of nowhere she starts crying and like really upset. Turns out she hates being tied up and was just playing along before cause she wanted to make me happy. Worst feeling ever. Sophomore year of college. I had just broken up with my long distance girlfriend who I started dating in high school. So I started going out more and met this girl through a friend. She was cute and funny and I was happy to be out of my crappy relationship. After about a month of seeing each other on and off we started hanging out one-on-one at each other's apartments. One night I stayed late at her place and she asked me to spend the night. So things progress and she seems to be into foreplay. She's breathing heavy but no moaning. Okay, that's fine. She does have roommates after all. Then we actually have a sex and she's silent with no facial expressions. I stop after a minute and ask if she's okay. She says, yes. This feels amazing. So I explain it's just a bit odd to me she's being so quiet. She convinces me to keep going and we both finish. I didn't end up staying and left around 2 AM. A few days later she's over at my place and I decide to try again because my roommate is gone so she doesn't have to be quiet. Nope. Same expressionless starfish act like before. It's a pretty big turn off at this point so I tell her I'm actually pretty tired. So we stop and finish watching Supernatural then she leaves. 2/10. The first time I tried masturbating with my left hand, it was like getting a handjob from someone with Parkinson's. It was my birthday. I was drunk and wanted to have some birthday sex. So I texted this guy I've been talking to, went to his house, We fooled around for a bit and when I got to his D it was incredibly small. I was very disappointed because he is a huge dude but his little friend is really little. Tried to get it inside a couple times, didn't happen. Gave him a BJ, he came. I patted his belly and fell asleep. Happy birthday me. I was taking a night class and started chatting to this girl during our smoke break. Eventually she came over and we did the typical movie couch cuddle making out. She gave me one of the best BJs I've ever had and I was thinking, man, she's going to duck like a porn star. This is going to be awesome. We go to my room. She's on top and acting a bit uncomfortable, like I'm in too deep. Not bragging. She rides for a bit, then suddenly says, did I tell you my dad used to molest me? Talk about mood killer. I think I said no, that's tragic. Switched positions and kept going. After I came, I drove her home and dropped the night course. A little late to the party, but when I was in high school my brother's best friend and I decided to finally have a sex after flirting for a couple years. I was 18 and he was around 22, so it was completely legal here in the US, but the only problem was that we both lived at home and were never really alone. Our solution? Drive up to the aqueduct during the night and duck in the truck. Well, he was a bigger fella, so the tiny backseat area of the truck was super cramped and he revealed to me that he had lied about not being a Virginia and I was about to take his virginity. I'm pretty laid back so I didn't care, but I was young and naive and never taken someone's virginity before, so I didn't realize that nerves could impede performance. So he never got hard, but he tried to jelly it in a couple times before some bright lights started us and the cops walked up and told us to get out. So in the tiny backseat of a truck with a big old dude we're desperately trying to put our clothes on while the cops make a couple jokes about us. Then they pulled me aside and asked me if I was there against my will and I managed to get out of me no. And then like a light switch they hopped in their cruiser and told us through the window to buy a house so we could duck there and drove off into the night. 2/10 experience, 8/10 cop experience. Please excuse all spelling and grammatical mistakes. I was sneak writing this at work on mobile. Worst sex I've ever had hands down was with my current girlfriend the second time we went out. Went on a hike. It was raining. Got into it on top of a mountain. I'd imagined it would be thrilling and badass. I never imagined having a half chub trying to stab this poor girl while a rock dug into her back. We were both shivering and tired after that, yet she stuck around for 3 years and much better sex. My friend was graduating college, so he threw himself an ice cream and stripper party. He ordered a stripper to his place and we watched a stripper duck herself, masturbating, with 20 dudes watching her and eating ice cream. It was the best weirdest experience I had so far, watching live porn and eating ice cream with sprinkles. After the show ended, this Tinder girl messaged me. It was like 2 AM at this point. She came over to my place and I was so excited from the show that I lasted 3 thrusts with this girl. She left right away. I was embarrassed but satisfied I got laid and had a belly full of ice cream. Edit. Added context and some rewording. Was cutting up some tilapia for dinner. Got frisky afterwards and decided to finger her. She starts screaming from tilapia residue still on my fingers. After she cools down we decide to have a sex. I start screaming from tilapia residue still in her bag. We called it a night. He had a micro D. I truly couldn't feel anything. I could have worked with him if he'd been generous going down on me, but he refused because he thought it was weird. The story few people in my real life know about. I had a GF who was really into anal and I'm not so much into it. Especially when it comes to me getting something up my ass. We've been dating for about a month when she tried the old finger up the tailpipe while blowing me. I jumped straight up on reflex and accidentally deep-throated the poor girl and she vomited on me. So I had mixed emotions between feeling violated, pissed off, disgusted, embarrassed, and sorry for everything that just happened in less than 5 seconds. We had a talk and I told her that my back door was a no-go zone and I'm also not into spelunking no matter who was receiving. So I thought that was the end of it. That was until about another month goes by and we're going at it again and she tried to shove a dildo up my ass. At least this time she wasn't blowing me at the time and I flew off the bed and into the wall while screaming no, no, no in a very feminine high-pitched squeal. For some reason that chick was very into anal and I didn't trust her enough not to try to shove something up my ass, so we broke up. It's too bad. That chick was perfect except for the surprise sodomy. Enough with the you should have kept her or be more open bullet. When I was a child things happened with a babysitter where I'm very uncomfortable about the ducking topic. Keep your d-holsters shut for duck's sake and stop trying to force 6 acts onto people that are uncomfortable with force 6 acts. I'm a grown ducking adult and I can decide for myself what I am and am not willing to do. I got a disclaimer right off the bat, it's been a while. But that wasn't even the problem. He shaved his entire body and was just starting to grow back. Being a hairy fella, every inch of him was covered in needle-like stubble. Thank God it had been a while for him. Because if it was any longer than the 20 seconds it was, I would have been bloody all over my body from his stubble rubbing against me. Tried it in a pool once. Not recommend. 0/10. I'm just here to make sure I'm not somebody else's worst experience. Was doing Thesix. Her on top. She got a little too rough and it bent. Immediate. Boner crushing pain. She said oops. And tried to keep going. I had to get her off of me. Then she got mad at me and said that if we couldn't have a 6, she'd just leave. Which is exactly what she did. She didn't understand why I refused to speak to her again. Sex in the shower. We slipped and fell. Got a little beat up. Where the girl just acts like a dead fish and puts in no effort whatsoever. Word. Hooked up with a girl on Halloween MMPHRPPHHH years ago. Took her back to my place and one thing led to another and before you know it she's riding me reverse cowgirl on my bed. I'm having a hell of a time grabbing her ass. But apparently the moderate to severe drinking we had been doing earlier was impacting her GI tract. And my grabbing and kneading of her ass prompts her to unleash a watery torrent of diarrhea on my stomach. This would be bad enough. But the combined effects of realizing what just happened with the smell caused me to start vomiting. For some reason, my first impulse was to try and hold back the puke. Because I was in my bed and didn't want to make a mess. Ducking thanks. Brain. But the whole debacle caused me to do much more than just a little heaving. As a result, the vomit forced its way not only out of my nose, but out of my ducking tear ducts. Experience rating. 0/10. Story rating. For the right audience. 10/10. I would say the time I ducked a horse but you said not to mention your mother. Operation Red Wings veteran here. There was a time my girlfriend came over and told me her monthly recreation of blood gulch was finally over and we could get down to business. So the lights go off. The clothes come off. It's going down. I'm thinking I must be doing great cause it feels like a monsoon down under. Well, we finish and I turn on the lights. Heavy. Flow. Ain't. Over. The room looks like something out of CSI. Based on the high velocity spatter I'd be looking for gunshot residue if I didn't know the horrible truth. She's crying out of embarrassment. Saying I thought it was over repeatedly as I'm fluctuating between shock and nausea. I end up having to run to the toilet. Blood coursing down my legs as if I'd taken a Rob Zombie film to the groin. I couldn't even find words to say to her and we both ended up cleaning up the viscera in silence. Had to throw out the bedding. Mattress had to be steam cleaned. And we both had PTSD around the phrase I thought it was over for a long time. Edit. I may not have responded as well as I could. But it was a huge shock and I had never had anything like that happen before. Also, I'm now aware that Red Wings is referring to oral. I didn't know that before. On mushrooms. She kept turning into one of those poor unfortunate soul things in The Little Mermaid. An ex and I were taking a nap when we started having sex. I was conscious that we were having sex, but still dreaming I was at a deli counter. When all was said and done we looked at each other slightly disgusted and agreed to never do that again. My wife is a notorious pecker-wrecker. Right in the middle of sex she'll say something like, "By the way, my parents wanted to know if we're free this weekend. Or did you remember to fix the washer?" I'll usually just stop and politely ask if we can discuss it at another time. Edit. Improved clarity. I was 17 and horny and newly interested in gay sex. I went on a night chat room on DLNet and there happened to be a guy in the next town over, and his photo wasn't so bad. So I decided to meet up with him for oral sex. We met in a CVS parking lot. He was way fatter than his photo and socially awkward. We got in his car where he brought me to his house. telling me he had been in a car accident and was on disability so he wasn't working. When we got to his house, turned out he lived with his mom and he sneaked me into his room. There wasn't much foreplay and he asked me to blow him first. He had a sawed-off shotgun, like 3-4 inches maybe. I wasn't sure he was hard but he was. I put my mouth on his D and within 10 seconds. For real. He said he was going to come and grabbed a washcloth and came into it. He offered to reciprocate but I couldn't be less aroused so I just asked to leave and he brought me back to his car. TLDR. I was inexperienced and thought Gay6 was blowing a fat basement dwelling disabled guy. I had a girl give me a blowjob one time and she was using her hand to fill in the gaps of time that her mouth wasn't on my junk. The problem was that she was pulling on my D like she was trying to start a lawnmower and it was incredibly painful. Not so much the it was so-so, but the aftermath. I was living in London, doing the broke version of 6 in the city as 20-something singleton. The guy I was with woke me up trying to sneak out of the room. Keyword trying. He was trying to find his shoes, stumbling around, swearing under his breath. So I mumbled that the key element of sneaking out was the ability to sneak. He was terribly offended. Why? Because I wasn't sad he was leaving. Even now that makes me shake my head in confusion. The fact I wasn't heartbroken at his cruel pre-dawn desertion made me a slut in his eyes. You know, if I'd been inconsolable and tried to get in touch with him again I'd be the crazy clingy itch. Some guys you just can't win with. We both fell asleep while I was knuckle deep. Maybe we both suck. My girlfriend had been talking about how she wanted to ride my face so one night we finally decide to do it. She wants to make a big thing of it so she puts on sexy underwear and sets up a playlist and everything. And she finally starts riding my face. I realized she didn't wipe well and the wetness from her pussy was mixing with the poop residue on her asshole. The whole time it was like she was just rubbing a poop solution on my face. The smell and the taste was awful but I didn't have the heart to say anything. I had her smell my face afterwards and she was mortified when she realized what happened. We're married now and I tease her about it still.